From the very beginning of my career, I really enjoyed listening to personal development experts. And some of the ones that impacted me the most were Zig Ziglar and Dan Miller. Now, what I remember, they're both no longer with us. What I remember the most about them are not really the principles they taught so much, but it was their stories. Like Zig was a sales expert coach, and he was from Yazoo City, Mississippi. And he talked about, living on a farm and places that he worked. And one of his illustrations was about priming the pump, that there are a lot of things that you just have to keep going and going and pushing, even though you're not seeing any water coming out, you just continue pumping, prime the pump. And he would talk about, pump, 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 don't give up pumping. And Dan Miller was another one. And his story was of being a Mennonite kid in that community and his family being farmers and him farming, on their land, but never really feeling like that life was perfectly suited for him. And then he got a hold of a recording of The Strangest Secret by Earl Nightingale. And he listened to that over and over. And it gave him hope that that he really could have a different life, that there was something else out there for him. It just gave him hope to keep going. And those are the things that I remember most about them, despite the fact that I haven't listened to some of their teaching in many years. And today, that's what we're going to talk about: stories, how to spot them, shape them, and share your personal stories in a way that builds real connection with your audience, whether you're on Instagram, whether you're speaking on a stage, or just recording your podcast. That's the conversation we're having today. Hey there, creative business owners. Welcome to the Higher Purpose Marketing Strategy Podcast. I'm Ashley Conway, and for over 20 years, I've been helping creative businesses as a marketing expert and copywriter. If you've ever felt like your branding or marketing is holding back your business's growth, and you're over being on the DIY hamster wheel, you're in the right place. Each week, I'll walk you through simple, story-filled strategies to build a harmonious marketing system that attracts your ideal high-paying clients without the overwhelm. Ready to make marketing work for you? Let's go. First, let's talk about why personal stories work. Personal stories are unique from every other thing that you talk about when it comes to your business or your marketing. If you're talking about, you have a methodology, you have a signature process, you have a framework, you have a philosophy, all of those things you talk about all the time, those are very beneficial and helpful, but they're not as memorable as your personal stories. Stories are the most memorable, they are the most captivating, and they are the best way to really make connections with your audience. Let's face it, people don't connect to information, and we are in a world of information overload. Everything you ever wanted to know is just a Google search or an AI search away. We're inundated with information. What we don't have enough of is connection, and that's what stories do. They connect you not through information, but through emotion. Personal stories, your personal stories, make you relatable instead of aspirational. They take you from being somebody who your audience may say, oh, I could never work with her, or I could never connect with her. She's such in another universe from me. But your personal stories make you more human. They bring you down here to a person, a real person, with real experiences. And that is what we want. That's when you build true committed connections with your audience. So think, what is your favorite speaker or brand? You probably can't quote their signature process, but I bet you remember a story that they told that made you lean in and made you say, yeah, this is my kind of person. This is what I really love, this speaker, this author, this brand, whoever it is, because you identified with that story. The best stories make people feel seen And when your audience can see a part of themselves in your story, that's when real connection happens. So let's talk about, how do you identify a great story? How do you spot it? What I want to do is to help you find story material from your everyday run of the mill life. These are some things that can help you mine great stories. So, first, think about moments from your childhood, times when you got hurt, best holidays or gifts, when you learned something new. Here's an example. So, I did not want to learn to ride a bike. I was terrified of doing it, and I just refused. I had one, my parents got me one. I just absolutely refused. We lived on a farm. There was no great place to do it, like no sidewalks or big parking lots nearby or anything that felt easier to me. It was all just like flat ground, basically. So I didn't want to do it. I had absolutely no interest. And my dad forced me. And I was so mad. I was crying. He forced me to do it. But you know what? That is how I learned to ride a bike. And to this day, I'm not a great cyclist. Don't get me wrong. The reason I can get on a bike and bike is because he forced me to do it, because he thought every person should know how to ride a bike. And there are some things in life that we really don't want to do, either because they're hard or because we think we're going to get embarrassed or because we know that we're going to have to fall down and get a little beat up in order to finish the thing. And that's what riding a bike was for me. And sometimes still in life, I need the push of somebody telling me, you have to do this, so that I will persevere through something that's hard to get the victory, the big win on the other side. That's an example of a memory from my childhood. What about memories, like your best memories with parents or siblings or friends? All of those stories that come to mind can be turned into a story that you can use for your business. Here are other ways to find stories. What about everyday funning or meaningful things that occur? For example, I was driving my girls to school the other day, and my youngest says, she's 7. That makes it even better. And she's like, "Oh, I hate my life." And I said, "Why do you hate your life?" "It's raining again." We're having like a historically rainy October here in Salt Lake. And she was so dramatic. And I think the story in that is, we all have those moments, women, we all have those moments where like we're being so dramatic about something. We have big feelings about something. And I think that's okay. And I think we have to give ourselves permission for at least a few minutes to feel the feelings, to be dramatic, and sometimes to vent to someone else our dramatic feelings so that we can move through them and carry on with the good work that we're doing. So, see what I'm saying? You can take anything and turn it into a story. You can borrow lines from movies or TV shows or books that stand out to you and touch you and turn that into a story. You can also borrow from history if you need something to make you think of a story. So, when this podcast comes out on November the 6th, that's the date Aerosmith played their first concert. You can find this just by Googling what happened in history on this date. So, thinking about Aerosmith reminds me of one of my best college friends. Her name was Emily, and she is like a hardcore Aerosmith fan. Her and, I can't remember if it's a friend, maybe it's like a friend and a sister or something like that. They have gone to so many Aerosmith concerts in different cities. It's like insane. But my concert memory with Emily was not Aerosmith. It was going to Kenny Chesney. We were in college. It was a very last minute thing. We're in Kentucky. We decided to drive to St. Louis to see him in concert. It was, I think we were late. We caught part of it. And then we left, and did not know St. Louis at all. We ended up and I can't even remember who was driving. Was it me or her? Went the wrong way down a one way in downtown St. Louis. And of course, we're screaming the whole time, like praying we do not meet another car. And I think it's just an example of, sometimes you have to do wild and crazy things and make those memories. That's some of the best times you can have. And it's okay to be wild and crazy in your business sometimes. So, see what I'm saying? You can use these things movies and TVs and books and history to jog your memory of a related story that then you can use to turn into something from your business. So it's not hard, as it's not as near as hard as you think to find a great story. So we have all these stories, right? That may be completely unrelated to our business. We need a bridge to connect them. So take your memory and look for, is there any kind of parallel with business? Did I have a perspective shift that I could use? Was there an emotion that relates to my business? Is there a truth that I learned in this memory that my audience could relate to? So ask yourself those things, go through your senses kind of, was there something I saw? Was there something, anything there that can serve as the bridge between your story, your personal story, and your audience? It's just not as hard as you think. I encourage you to give it a try. Because remember, a story doesn't have to be dramatic, over the top to be powerful. It just has to be true and it has to be told well. And how do you tell it well? That's what we're going to talk about next. How to set up your story for connection. So let's use 3 steps, 3 simple steps. First is you tell the story. You have to set up the scene of the story that you're about to tell. And you can do this pretty quickly of just painting the picture of where you were at and who was there, right? And that's how you set up the moment. Then you're going to go into the meaning. So you recap the story really quickly, and then you're saying, this is the meaning that I got out of it. Then the message, you tie that meaning to your audience. So I'm going to recap over those. You talk about the moment, which is the story, the meaning, which is what you learned or realized or thought, and then the message, you tie that lesson to your audience. So here are a few tips when you're doing this. Keep your story tight. So you don't want to go on for 5 minutes even telling a story. You want to keep it shorter than that. You don't want to give so many details that they are getting distracted or overwhelmed. And remember, when you're telling the story, you are not the hero. The point of the story is your audience. So make sure that you are doing a really good job connecting for them how your personal story should matter to them. Because remember, this was like the number one thing I learned in college when I was getting a degree in this. It was that your audience is always asking, what's in it for me? WIIFM. That's how you remember it. What's in it for me? And that's what you have to make sure you don't leave out of your story. How do you cultivate and keep these stories, right? Otherwise, you just have to kind of rely on your memory to come up with something in the right instance that you need it. Like, I need a story about, whatever it is. Now I just have to come up with something. It can be easier than that. So, what we're going to do is create a system. We're going to create a story bank. Now, you can use Google Doc. You can use your notes app on your phone. You can record voice memos. You can start a new conversation in ChatGPT and voice record the memory or the story into that. You drop them in there, however you want to do it. I mean, you could have an old school notebook if you want. Record the story. That's all you have to do initially before you forget it. If you have time, you can go back through and make sure the lesson is in there. Now, when you are recording these things that happened, try to put a category with it. So, for example, when I was telling the story about Julia and her being dramatic and I hate my 7-year-old life, that is a good story that I could tie to being dramatic or emotions. So I could make those quick notes with that story so that I know if I need to come back later and I want to try to tie that to a business principle, that's the thread that I can use to do it. I mean, a part of this is keeping a story lens during your daily life, like noticing the funny, the frustrating, the meaningful, everyday moments of your life. And instead of just, because sometimes it's easy to notice, like, oh my gosh, that was funny, or oh my gosh, that really stood out to me. go the extra step of writing them down somewhere, because you have to keep this lens on of, I am a storyteller. I have a business, and that makes me a storyteller. If you've never considered yourself that before, you are. You don't have to write a book to be a storyteller. You don't have to be a speaker on a stage to be a storyteller. You have a business, and stories are your best way of connecting. So now you're a storyteller, which means the everyday things you do, the lunch you have with someone, the place you go on the weekend, the project that you're working on, everything could be a source of a story. So keep that lens on. And here's your pro tip, try to capture the story when the emotion is fresh, when you remember what happened, how you felt, what you learned. Try to capture it then. And just know that the best storytellers aren't the most interesting people. Sure, they have great stories too. The people who do exotic things and they travel the world, and those people have great stories, but they're not the only ones. The people who tell the best stories are the ones who are the most observant, who pay attention to those everyday little things. The best way to become a storyteller is just to start noticing your own life, no matter how big or how small that is. Just be a noticer, as a book by Andy Andrews, just be a noticer of your own life and of the things that are going on around you. Write down one story this week. That's my challenge. Something that made you laugh or cry or stop in your tracks, and share it in your next social post or email or podcast intro. Just make a list of, a note of one story that's something that happened to you. Now, if you want help setting some of this up, setting up your story bank, helping get a few initial stories out of you and figuring out how to set those up and connect those with your audience, let's do a free strategy call just to get you started. You can book that at bit.ly/Be Weird Call. Thanks so much for tuning in, and until next time, stay weird.
Thanks for listening to today's show. For all things podcast, including transcripts, extra resources, and a place to submit questions for the show, visit higherpurposemarketingstrategy.com. I'd also love for you to do me 2 quick favors. 1, leave a review on Apple Podcasts, and 2, share this episode with your colleagues. And that's a wrap. Meet you back here next week.